Part 35. I can only go with the flow. No tense as before, like harmonious. This year's snow is a bit frequent, less than a month, but there are 3 games, one is bigger than the other. Fortunately the time is short, otherwise it will be difficult to move an inch at this time. Where can I have the leisure to visit the garden? In the Imperial Garden, Pu Qiutai took Xia Dongming, Zhu Shanyan, and Zhu Mingfang to move forward slowly, surrounded by a large group of eunuchs and palace maids, chatting casually with Farong. Isn't it? Fortunately, the government in various places still has some actions, but I haven't heard of anyone freezing to death, which is great luck. Listening to Farong's words, Pu Qiutai was silent. He remembered that many years ago, when he traveled in winter, he often saw a large number of beggars and people freezing to death on the roadside. He sighed for a while, and secretly said that it was a pity that they were born in that era when the people were not able to make a living. If they could live in this peaceful and prosperous world, would they be able to live for a long time? Thinking of this, I couldn't help but be stunned, and then I realized that I didn't know when I had agreed with Xia Linxuan's statecraft. Some hated their admiration for that bastard king, but his achievements were now there. Pu Qiutai was grateful to the sobbing Emperor Da Qing for governing the country and the devastation. But in the end, he relied on this domineering king to clean up a huge mess and give hundreds of people a prosperous life without worrying about food and clothing. Huh? What's that ahead? Just thinking about it, he suddenly heard Zhu Shanyan shouting. Pu Qiutai looked in the direction he pointed, frowned, turned his head to Farong and said, "Why? The beggars outside still have a way to live, so they won't freeze to death. But the masters in this palace like to punish the slaves for kneeling in the snow and freezing to death in the snow?" Farong was stunned and surprised. "What do you say? There was such a thing a few days ago. Why is there someone here to punish the servants today? This kind of thing has never been common before, and in such a place. If you don't really make a big mistake and let people see it, there may not be any good things to say about the masters." "Oh, is that so?" Pu Qiutai nodded lightly, walked up to the girl, turned his head and asked Farong, "Look at which palace this palace maid is, do you recognize her?" Farong stepped forward to look at it, shook her head and said, "I've never seen it." This palace maid is 15 or 16 years old at most, right? At such an age, where can she get her turn to serve in front of her masters?" Speaking of this, she turned her head to look at Pu Qiutai, and said carefully, "Mother, this kind of thing is not easy to take care of after all, so let's just leave it alone, right?" Pu Qiutai said lightly, "A palace maid at a young age can't take her turn to serve in front of her master, but now she is punished to kneel here." He had already understood it in his heart by this time, and knew that Farong must have doubts. Otherwise, she would not have said such a word of advice, knowing his own temperament. Reasoning, this matter should not be taken care of. But Pu Qiutai looked at the little palace maid's frozen face and purple lips. He was really a little unbearable, so he struggled for a long time in his heart. He couldn't help but sigh, and said to Farong, "That's it, you go and ask. If there is nothing to do, can you help? This matter may have ulterior motives, but you look at her age, I'm afraid it's just a little chess piece. If you can't let her master fulfill her wish, let's go over. She will die here, and she will die in vain." Farong hurriedly said, "Why is mother so kind to a woman? You've already had the last thing. What if you come out again and fulfill someone's wish and lead the fire to yourself?" Pu Qiutai was silent. And just when Farong thought that he had listened to her advice and wanted to give up this matter, but she heard him say in a deep voice, "It doesn't matter if you fulfill your wishes or set yourself on fire. Your emperor promised me that he would protect me. Why are those people so deliberately targeting me? Isn't it because I'm what they call 3,000 favors in one? That being the case, then I'll let them take a good look at what it means to be pampered and proud. Mother! Farong screamed helplessly, but saw that Pu Qiutai had already stepped forward in person, helped the little palace maid, and saw that the other party was shining with hope. So he turned back to the little eunuch who accompanied him and said, "Send this palace maid to the clothes room, since her master is disgusted with her like this. Let her work in the clothes room in the future." The clothes room is the place where the palace takes care of and makes the clothes of the palace maidens, and it is also a good office in the palace. This little palace maid escaped from death and was sent to such a place, so she didn't have to be frightened anymore. She should have been very happy, but her eyes showed a strong look of surprise. A moment of effort, this surprise turned into disappointment, and even forgot about gratitude for a while. Farong was displeased, and opened her mouth to reprimand, and at this time, Pu Qiutai had already confirmed his guess, smiled slightly, he stretched out his hand to stop Farong, and said indifferently, "Needless to say, let's go to Linxuan nunnery. The barbecue that I ordered to prepare before is probably ready, and it will be cold if you don't go over." After speaking, he bent over and looked at the Crown Prince Xia Dongming and Zhu Shanyan Zhu Mingfang and said with a smile, "Take you to eat barbecue. But let's talk in advance, we don't have a lot to eat. It's just to satisfy our hunger with this snowy scene." Xia Dongming looked at Pu Qiutai with complicated eyes, and it wasn't until he walked out of the distance that he smiled and said, "I only think that my mother is a good person, and I am also like a mirror in my heart, but it is because of compassion that you refuse to demolish them. And you also saved the life of this little palace maid." Pu Qiutai said lightly, "Since you were born as a human being, you should have compassion. And it will not be difficult to save the little palace maid, even if they have any means. The soldiers will block the water and cover the earth, so to speak, it is also a life. This compassion is different from foolishness." "What is foolishness?" "Master Dongguo is foolish to save the wolf, knowing that the wolf is ferocious, and he wants to save it. Isn't that putting himself in? For example, the performance of Song Shanggong in the Battle of Hongshui was even more stupid, so whether it is a monarch or a citizen, if you have the ability, you should have compassion and benevolence, but you must put an end to that pedantic foolishness. For the sake of the monarch, to put an end to pedantic and foolishness. And to pay attention to benevolence and righteousness. How to do this? Xia Dongming is the crown prince. And today Pu Qiutai rarely took this opportunity to teach some things that seemed to be the way to govern the country, and this was naturally told to him. So this kid immediately became interested and asked to the bottom of this matter. Pu Qiutai thought about it seriously, and said solemnly, for example, for the monarch to be benevolent and righteous, and to love the people of the world as his own people. Your father emperor ordered all localities to do a good job of cold protection in winter this time, so that in several heavy snowfalls, there were few people who froze to death. This is benevolence and righteousness. However, in the process, I heard that a Chipinji county in eastern Liaodong ignored this order, so that 15 people froze to death in his jurisdiction. And later found out that he had embezzled and bribed 50,000 taels of silver, and there were as many as 13 unjust cases during his tenure, including 5 unjust deaths. But your father did not get lost in the voice of singing praises of virtue and calling the benevolent monarch. He still ordered the beheading of this magistrate to show the public, which is both great benevolence and righteousness, and not foolishness and deception. Well, I understand, so just like my father did, the reward that should be rewarded, the killing that should be killed, the reward and punishment are clear. This is not stupid kindness and benevolence, right? Xia Dongming suddenly realized, then looked up at Pu Qiutai, and said with a grin, "It's not that the mother concubine said this to me today, I don't know yet. It turns out that my father's image in the eyes of the mother concubine is so good. Do you now think that my father is the emperor of the ages? What nonsense. Pu Qiutai's face sank, but he saw Xia Dongming grimacing at him, and said with a grin, "But I think that my father also has the kindness of a woman, such as the Baishan collection case." Why did he put it down gently? That Han Baishan openly missed his homeland and incited public sentiment in his essays. Such a rebellious guy should be beheaded by the whole family. Why didn't he even ask for his life later? The question is a bit acute. In terms of crimes, Han Baishan missed his homeland and criticized the new dynasty, which was indeed a heinous crime. But Xia Linxuan let him go because of Pu Qiutai, which in the eyes of others, was done by being confused by lust and fainting. At this time, Xia Dongming brought it up. It was deliberately to make it difficult for Pu Qiutai. If the other party quibbled that this was nothing, it was not a big crime, then he could just laugh at the other party's two-sided standards. Farong and the others were a little anxious in their hearts, and secretly said that they were so good. Why did they face Wheat On like this again? So, they all looked at Pu Qiutai cautiously. They saw that he didn't have the slightest embarrassment. And there was only a stunned expression on his face, as if he was immersed in some memories and thoughts. Xia Dongming didn't hear an answer for a long time, thinking that he had finally stumped Pu Qiutai, so he couldn't help but ask again proudly, and then said with a smile, "The mother concubine can't answer? It's okay if you can't answer. In fact, I also know that for you, my father is willing to break any example." The words fell, but he saw that Pu Qiutai finally came back to his senses, and then smiled disapprovingly, and said lightly, "Prince, do you think the emperor let go of Han Baishan's family because of my relationship?" "Isn't it?" Xia Dongming asked with some surprise. "Isn't it a secret way? Could it be that he didn't even admit this for the sake of face? That's so sorry for what my father did for him. There are some reasons, of course." But listening to Pu Qiutai's slow mouth, he didn't deny it completely, but he quickly sighed. "But the reason is not very important. Doesn't the prince understand? The emperor was willing to let go of the Han family. Not just because I interceded, but because he had self-confidence, a very strong self-confidence. And he was confident that the daimyo dynasty under his rule would no longer have the hearts of the people to Daqing. Because people in troubled times are not as good as peace dogs. As long as the people can have a peaceful life, they will not mess with these fatal things. And Han Baishan is just nostalgic for his homeland. Even if he is dissatisfied with the new dynasty and criticizes, it is not to incite people to rebel, so the emperor will graciously not pursue this matter." Did my father have such a big heart? Xia Dongming's eyes were shining. Thinking of his powerful emperor father, he only felt more admired. But Pu Qiutai remembered the price he had paid for this matter, and his face suddenly darkened half, and he snorted coldly, "Is he broad-minded?" "Not necessarily." "Okay, Lu Shuiyan has arrived. Don't gossip, hurry up and go in and eat barbecue." Xia Dongming screamed with joy, pulled Zhu Shanyan and ran forward. Here Qingbi and Chengxing hurriedly shouted to slow down. And a few little eunuchs followed behind, and Farong glanced at Luliu, thinking that it was great. It turned out that in Mother's heart, the emperor's image has gradually improved. Which is really a good thing. If your majesty knows, I don't know how to be excited. Ah, go away. Ah, you. What's wrong with you today? Taken an aphrodisiac? Yes. Come back. In the heavy brocade tent, Pu Qiutai's whole body was sore, and he could only lie on the shoulders of the strong man in front of him, and let his powerful arms lift himself up and put down, and a place behind him that contained a huge foreign object had already been developed and completely soft, and in this ups and downs. The murder weapon went straight to the deepest part of the body. Quick! I can't. Yes. You bastard. No. Ah. Hum. A loud prodigal moan rang out as another ferocious, rapid, stormy thrust pierced. And in the depths of the corridor, the hot pain accompanied by the pleasure of being unable to stop it surged towards the limbs and bones of the body, which made Pu Qiutai frightened. Except for the violent sex at the beginning, he has not experienced the feeling of making that shameful place so painful for a long time. After accepting him as a concubine, Xia Linxuan, the big bad wolf, obviously has a sense of satisfaction of eating and drinking, so he is not stingy and considerate of his lover in sex, and is generally more restrained. And tonight, this tyrant didn't know what he was so excited about. Pu Qiutai was pressed by him in various postures, until now, only dizzy, even his arms and legs didn't seem to be his own. Qiutai. With a sweet and greasy goosebumps, the tyrant finally ejaculated the dragon spirit into his lover's body in a heavy gasp. And then he hugged the body that was soft because of the loss of strength, and whispered emotionally, "Qiutai, I like you. I just like it, I don't know how to like it." So, you're going to like it in this savage way? Pu Qiutai looked sad and indignant. What kind of medicine did this bastard take? Why are you so unlucky? Who is it that provoked whom? Why does bad luck keep coming? Oh, I seem to be a little more enthusiastic tonight. I'm sorry, I really can't control it, can't you bear Qiutai? Xia Linxuan said that he was embarrassed. But there was no apologetic expression on his handsome face, and Pu Qiutai, who was watching it, especially wanted to strangle him. Your Majesty, you really like to tell jokes. Pu Qiutai gritted his teeth. If it goes on like this, you just wait to collect my body. In the past, this trick was the best. Probably there had been shadows before, so Xia Linxuan was particularly concerned about his body. As long as he said this, he was sure that this tyrant would be able to put away that volcanic enthusiasm for several days, but Pu Qiutai didn't expect that this method of trying all things would also be invalid today. So, what to do? Obviously, he has ejaculated, but the tyrant who still relies on the remaining power in Pu Qiutai's body thinks seriously, I love you so much. This self-control will probably get worse and worse in the future, but you can't bear it. Qiutai, so what should I do? Yes. The bastard emperor looked at his lover excitedly. Qiutai. Now it is obvious that there is something wrong with your body. It is too weak. It is better to teach you some fists and embroidered legs in the future, not to hurt people, but to strengthen your body, so that your body can be exercised. Why don't you die? Pu Qiutai is such a calm and gentle temperament, he can't help but struggle violently. Xia Linxuan's body. He doesn't care about cursing the emperor is a big crime of raiding the family and exterminating the clan, because he is really angry. If he didn't know in his heart that the difference in strength between himself and this tyrant is not ordinary, Pu Qiutai will definitely kick Xia Linxuan under the bed. Xia Linxuan was willing to let his lover escape. He hurriedly hugged him in his arms again, and saw that Pu Qiutai's face was white, so he hurriedly smiled and said, Okay, spare you. Spare you. I really don't do it. Go, I will take you to the bath. In the steaming big bathtub, the sour body was comforted by the hot water, and finally faded a little. Pu Qiutai leaned on the edge of the barrel. His mind was spinning rapidly. What was going on in the dark passage? Why is this bastard so unreasonable all of a sudden? He was okay before. What happened? Qiutai, what are you thinking? Just as he was thinking about it, the shameless tyrant quietly swam over and asked with a smile in his ear. How can I fall out of favor? Pu Qiutai replied angrily, and then looked at Xia Linxuan. What happened today? Nothing happened. It's just that I happened to know Qiutai's evaluation of me during today, and then I realized that in Qiutai's heart, I am not just a lustful and unscrupulous mediocre tyrant. So I am so happy. Who told you that? Pu Qiutai never dreamed that it would be his own fire, and when he heard this, he almost fainted. There are still ghosts in this Yunhai palace? Sure enough, he didn't care too much about these things. Is it any wonder that this bastard turned into a wolf, and he heard those words? And his own good? Hee, don't worry about this Qiutai. Xia Linxuan smiled wickedly, rubbed 2 handfuls on Pu Qiutai's body. In fact, he took the opportunity to eat 2 mouthfuls of delicious tofu, then stood up, picked up his lover with sore hands and feet, picked up the white towel hanging on the screen, and wrapped his whole person. His Royal Highness Crown Prince told you, right? Pu Qiutai asked with a cold face. Although he was very angry at first, thinking that there was an inner ghost in the Yunhai palace, but after calming down, he quickly understood. Other people can give orders, but this little prince. I am afraid that the more you order him, the more he will disagree with you. He blamed himself for being soft-hearted for a while, thinking that if you can educate this little prince to be the same as his father, it will be a blessing for the people in the future. So, if you are careless, you actually said all the words in your heart, thinking about that little bastard. In order to make Xia Linxuan toss himself at night, he is even willing to take the drudgery of reading seriously. Do you need to ask if you want to learn such a tongue? Xia Dongming thought that his mind was very secretive and clever, but how could he hide it from Pu Qiutai? It's just that Xia Linxuan is very restrained these days, so he has never pierced the little guy's mind, but now that such a thing has happened, he wants to refuse to teach Xia Dongming knowledge again, but when he thinks that the 3 children are getting along now, although he can't say that he is harmonious, but he is not as tense as before, he can't say this. Forget it. I'm such a fate, I confessed it a long time ago, didn't I? Now you can only go with the flow. Who made you think about your parents and refuse to die at the beginning? Pu Qiutai, who was embraced by the domineering monarch, helplessly persuaded himself in his heart, and slowly closed his eyes in the crook of Xia Linxuan's arm, and on the long and rectangular pillow. The hair spread out by the 2 was entangled with each other, as if it was a bond between life and life.